On today's episode, we hit a wide variety of topics, including river smallmouth patterns, reeling with your right or left hand, FeelFree Kayaks, the most versatile combo you can build, and more on today's episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. As always, we are brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. And right now, they are running their June overstock blowout over at AmericanLegacyFishing.com, where you can save up to 50% off some of your favorite brands, including Phoenix rods, Waterland sunglasses, Arc, Dobbins, Berkley, Abu Garcia, Shimano, Daiwa. Certain products from all of those brands are deeply discounted right now, up to 50% off. So you go to AmericanLegacyFishing.com, you click the banner right there on the homepage. It's going to take you to a page where you can save a ton of money, including Berkley Powerbait Nessie soft glide baits from $649. So those are half off right now. You've got great deals on like a Daiwa Legalis for $49. You've got Shimano Zodiacs available for $139, normally $230. You've got Arc Invokers for $89 that are normally $150. You've got Waterland sunglasses, normally $340 for like the Milliken versions. Those are on sale for $135, so more than half off of those Waterland sunglasses and a ton more. I just scratched the surface here. There's probably, I don't know, it feels like there's 100, 150 things on this list. So you can go check them out over at AmericanLegacyFishing.com. And as always, you can use code TackleTalk5. That's going to save you an extra 5% off almost everything on the website, including sale items. So you go to this page, these items are already deeply discounted. You can use code TackleTalk5 to save even more money. We have to give a big thanks to the folks over at American Legacy Fishing. They make this entire episode and this entire podcast possible. Go support them, AmericanLegacyFishing.com, and use code TackleTalk5. Okay, folks, first thing here today, Major League Fishing just wrapped up Stage 5 of the Bass Pro Tour at Kentucky Lake June 5th through 8th in Calvert City, Kentucky, and we owe you a quick recap. Now, this is an event that a lot of people, including myself, have been looking forward to since the schedule was announced this year. One, because it's kind of semi-close to me, so I guess that's cool. But really, because Kentucky Lake has been the subject of a lot of discussion over the past, I don't know what it is, probably 5 or 10 years or more, because of its notable decline in production. And those come from a wide variety of factors. It depends on who you ask. Pressure, invasive species. I'm not trying to get into all that today, but it's a lake that was awesome, then had quite a falling off, and now, according to boots on the ground in Kentucky that fish a lot there, is on the right track and making a bounce back. So I was curious, how would Kentucky Lake fish? And while many anglers did have a rough go out there this week, some of the anglers with a lot of history on Kentucky Lake, wink, wink, nod, nod, made a point in saying that they thought it was heading in the right direction, including one gentleman who used to be somewhat of a local here that we'll talk about here in a minute, saying that there were a ton of, I think he said like 3 to 3.5 pound fish that were just showing up all over Kentucky Lake, and that's great to see. And if we take care of those 3.5 pound fish now, who knows what Kentucky Lake could look like in another 5 or 10 years and get back to what it once was. But let's get to your top 10 here really fast from Stage 5 of the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour. 10th place went to Michael Neal, 9th, Andy Montgomery, 8th, Spencer Sheffield, 7th, Cole Floyd, 6th place, Adrian Avina, 5th, John Hunter, 4th, Jacob Wall, 3rd place, Brent Ayler, 2nd, Jake Lawrence, and stop me if you've heard this before, 1st place with a $150,000 check and another big red trophy to add to the trophy shelf, one of the most dominant anglers on the planet, Jacob Wheeler.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, lines out in the day.
Man, we did it. Oh, gosh. I try to keep this together. My dad passed away earlier this year, and I just felt like he was with me all week. I did. It's the first tournament that I fished since, on a lake that we fished together. And this one had a lot of meaning to it, man. Obviously, he was a big part of my life, and I wouldn't be here without him, man. I just wanted to win it for him, you know, and I just felt like, gosh, I'm sorry, y'all. It's tough, man. It's just, obviously anybody who's lost their parents or lost their father, it's not easy, man. When Father's Day is coming up, and it's the first Father's Day that I'll be without my dad. And I just wanted to represent and you know, give him the win and just do it for him. He gave me a lot of opportunity throughout my life, and I wouldn't be here without him. So I know y'all probably have, some of y'all can, you know, he lost a battle with cancer in April, and it was right during Red Crest, and it just feels like this one's for you, Pops.
And right there, just listening to that, you can tell what this one meant to Jacob. I mean, Jacob grew up in Indiana. He fished Kentucky Lake a lot growing up. Obviously, his dad was a huge part of that with him, and Jacob lost his dad this past spring to a battle with cancer, and it's hard not to get emotional on this one. Whatever you believe, whatever your level of faith is, some things just seem like there's a little bit of divine intervention involved, and this certainly felt like one of those instances. This is also Jacob Wheeler's ninth Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour title since the Bass Pro Tour was created in 2018. It's a level of dominance in fishing that we may have only seen a handful of times in the past. It all depends on how you want to compare leagues and eras and, you know, prestige and all that kind of thing, but no one else in Major League Fishing has come even close to what Jacob Wheeler has done over the past few years. I think, and I could be wrong here, I didn't fact check this, someone out there probably can for me, but I think the closest person to Jacob Wheeler's 9 wins is Dustin Connell, who I believe probably has 5 if you count Red Crests, I think, and then it just goes downhill from there for all the other anglers. So Jacob has almost doubled the next closest angler and is running circles around the rest of the field over the 2018 to 2025 timeframe. And it's just one of those things. It's like when most of us were lucky enough to watch like Tom Brady in his prime with the Patriots, or if you were around to watch Michael Jordan back in the day, or Tiger Woods during their peaks of their career. You just have to take a second and appreciate greatness. And I don't care if you're the biggest Wheeler fan or the biggest Wheeler hater, we should all take a second and just realize the magnitude of moments like this, because they don't come around very often. Number 9 since 2018 is crazy. So a big congratulations to Jacob Wheeler and the rest of your top 10 for Major League Fishing's Stage 5 of the BPT over at Kentucky Lake. Next up for MLF will be Stage 6 at the Potomac River in Maryland. That's going to be June 26th through 29th. And the Bassmaster Elite Series kicks off their next event at Lake Tenkiller in Oklahoma this week, June 12th through 15th. Live coverage for both of those events will be available for free over on both MajorLeagueFishing.com and Bassmaster.com, respectively. Okay, folks, next up here today, just a shameless plug here, I guess, but I don't think we've fully announced this on the show here, but if you live in the Dayton area and you're looking for an awesome fishing kayak, my 2023 Hobie Outback that I've used for the past year and a half is officially for sale. So this kayak is a dream. I have loved running this kayak for the past couple years. It's fast, it's versatile, it's just a fishing machine. So this kayak comes with an insanely lightly used Hobie 180 Mirage pedal drive that, again, I barely took with me ever. It's got the kick-up turbo fins, so if you hit something underwater, they pop right up so you don't break them. It's great for shallow water, great for deep water. It really propels this thing pretty darn fast. Everything that you could want on the stock kayak is in great condition, the rudder, the hull, everything, and it comes with about $800 in upgrades. I think total everything that I've done to this kayak cost me about $4,100. I'm selling it right now for $2,200, so about half off. An awesome deal if you're around the Dayton area and you're looking for a water-ready fishing machine. That Hobie Outback is for sale. If you're interested, hit me up. More than happy to send pictures or answer questions. Just shoot me a message on Instagram or Facebook, or you can email tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. And everybody, I just needed to pop back in here. This is Andrew from about 5 hours in the future from when this episode drops, I guess. And I just needed to add in here that the kayak has been sold. So that went way quicker than I thought it would. I appreciate you guys. I just wanted to pop back in here really fast, a little update. If you're listening to this and you thought about reaching out, the kayak has been sold. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get to the good stuff here. And I have to be honest with you guys this week, I'm struggling this week. We're coming off of 2 straight weeks at my regular job at work where we probably averaged like 90 to 95 hours each week of work. So you're talking 13, 14, 15-hour days, no weekends, no days off. So I was definitely, struggling to get this episode out. So I apologize for that in advance, but no excuses. You guys deserve a Tackle Talk episode every Tuesday, and I should have planned better on my end, but I want to get this out for you guys. So today is going to be a full mailbag episode because I haven't had time to really fish or prep a more standard episode here for this week. I don't have a guest episode that I was able to schedule around work. I haven't really been active on social media, so I know it's been kind of radio silence the past 2 weeks. I apologize, but I really appreciate you guys bearing with me this week. We're going to crack open into a bunch of really great mailbag questions that we got over the past probably week and a half. And the first one here is from Justin. He says, "Hey Andrew, love the show. So much online fishing content focuses on largemouth bass in ponds and lakes, but how about giving river smallmouth some love? I'd love to hear a full episode or at least a deep dive segment all about river smallies. How do they move and behave throughout the seasons? How do they respond to clear versus murky water or low versus high water levels? When do they hold in calm eddies versus fast riffles? How do they behave around current seams? And most importantly, what are the best strategies for consistently catching them in rivers? Thanks for all you do, Justin." Oh man, Justin, I don't know. I think you can accuse me of a lot of things. I'm definitely not perfect, but I think we do give river smallmouth their love here on Tackle Talk. I'm not sure if you're thinking of another show, but I would probably say we skew almost a little too much toward river smallmouth sometimes because that's how I like to fish. It's my favorite thing to do. So I think sometimes we honestly ignore lakes or ponds or largemouth a little bit too much on the show. I try to balance it really well, but I think just the way I am, I lean more toward moving water smallmouth just naturally. But yes, we will do a full conversation and an episode on smallmouth here sometime soon. That's a good suggestion. But we can certainly hit the highlights of your questions that you asked in your submission here. How do they move throughout the seasons? I guess first off, I can only speak to how our river smallmouth move. So this is going to be a huge generalization, but I feel like a lot of our fish slide up to feed and then they slide back to chill. So those fish will move upstream to the nearest blatantly obvious feeding point, like a ledge or a dam or a big juicy current seam or a fast riffle, whatever that next natural formation or spot is. And that happens a lot in the spring and in the fall. And then in the winter, I feel like a lot of those fish slide back downstream to a deeper, slower hole that they usually spend most of the winter in. And then the summer is kind of a wild card. If you haven't had much rain, I feel like those fish fall back. If you have had some rain or you get a little higher water or stained water, I feel like they slide up and they're a little bit more active. But I think a lot of these fish have a pretty regular feeding area and then a pretty regular resting area or an area they just kind of chill in when they're not actively feeding. So they also respond to water level changes a lot, and they become a lot more or less active depending on what that water level is doing. But that chart, if you were going to kind of draw this out, would almost look like a roller coaster. Like if the water is low on like the left side of the graph, they're going to be less active. And as the water level rises, I feel like our fish around here get more active. And if you catch those fish on a rising water level, you can have the best day of your life if you hit it right. But then there comes a point where the water is too high and the activity level starts dropping again. So there's definitely a sweet spot in there somewhere. And I think as far as current seams go, that's kind of a pretty broad term or question to try and ask, because it doesn't just depend on what the water or the flow is doing or where the seam or eddy is, but about what's going on beneath the water on the bottom. Shallow and deep seams act differently. Dirty and clean seams can be different. If there's a mud line, that changes things sometimes. But typically, I feel like like most fish sit near the seam on the calmer side, and then they ambush as things pass in the faster water. So they can shoot out into the faster water, attack or feed or whatever they're doing, and then they can kind of slide back over into the calmer water again, so they're not exerting as much effort all the time sitting in that roaring current seam. They're smart. They figure out the areas where they can exert less effort, but still be in an optimal chance to ambush something that's going by. They know that bait fish and things like that are a little bit more susceptible to current, and they can be swept down, and bass are opportunistic feeders, so they really make sure that they are in a position to capitalize on that when it does happen. So I feel like it's a pretty good place to start. But man, that's a conversation that could go on for hours. All of the intricacies of moving water smallmouth. We'll definitely revisit that at some point soon, but hopefully at least that starts to answer some of your questions. Okay, the next question here is from Jonah, and he says, "Hi Andrew, I just want to say thank you for hosting and running one of the best fishing shows out there. I've learned so much from all the episodes. I know it can't be easy to get an episode out consistently, and I just want to say thanks. My question is, do you prefer to throw a weightless Texas rig Senko on a bait caster or a wacky rig Senko on a spinning rod? I've tested both, and I seem to get the same amount of bites, but my landing percentage has been better with the weightless Texas rig on the bait caster. Recently, I've been flipping them into brush and grass, and I also fish them around docks. Thanks again, Jonah." Well, first off, Jonah, thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like I probably should say, while I do really appreciate everybody's kind words when they write into the mailbag, I feel like a lot of people follow the same format of, there's always like a really nice couple sentences at the beginning. And again, while I do appreciate it, you don't have to do that. I feel like I should probably say that. That doesn't make a difference whether your question gets picked or not. It's more about the topic. So you can just submit your question if you want and just say, hey, what's better, weightless Texas rig Senkos or wacky rigs? You guys don't have to be so nice, I guess. I really do appreciate it, but I promise you don't have to. But yeah, it's not always easy. I know I kind of mentioned that, I guess, a little bit at the beginning of the show. This week was kind of a struggle, but when you're passionate about something, it makes it a lot easier to get the job done and you make it work. But man, your test that you did on both of these baits, it makes perfect sense to me because your landing percentage should be better on a bait caster where you probably have slightly heavier line and you have a more stout, better driven home worm hook or a wide gap hook versus a lighter spinning setup where you probably have like an open circle or like a wacky style hook. A fish is going to have more leverage on you on the spinning gear and when you have that smaller, more finessey hook. So yeah, that makes total sense to me. If you're fishing around brush or grass, like you said, then I'm like you. I'm reaching for the weightless Texas rig on the bait caster all day long. I want something where I have power on my side and I want to make sure that I'm not losing fish in those trees or in that grass. So yeah, Jonah, I'm right there with you. What you said makes perfect sense. Okay, the next question is from Dylan, and he says, "Hey, Andrew, first off, love the show. You got me into kayak fishing, so thank you for that. Now my question, or more of a statement, I guess, why are some so dead set that as right-handed fishermen that they must keep a spinning rod left-handed? It makes absolutely zero sense to me because it takes maybe 15 seconds to switch the handle to the other side of that reel. It truly baffles me why someone would want to reel on different sides throughout the day. That would be like me buying both left-handed and right-handed bait casters and having to switch all day instead of not even having to think about my reeling position and just doing it. For whatever reason, this pokes a part of my brain, and it's probably because my best friend does it. But anyway, thanks for your input, Dylan from Missouri." Dylan, amen, my man. Preach it, brother. Say it louder for the folks in the back. I am 100% with you. I catch flack for this too all the time. I fish both spinning and casting gear with the rod in my left hand and the reel in my right hand. And like I said, I catch a ton of flack from my buddies for not having my handle on the left side of my spinning gear and reeling with my left hand anytime I'm using a spinning rod. Why would I do that? I want to reel with the same hand no matter what. Why would I do the polar opposite with a spinning rod than I do with a bait caster? For the life of me, I don't get that argument. And when people say, "Oh, well, I don't want to switch hands with my spinning rod and I just want to cast and reel," I just want to scream like, but you do that with your bait caster anyway. You cast and thumb with your right hand and then you switch the rod over to your left hand and then you reel with your right hand again. What's the difference in doing that with a spinning rod versus a casting casting rod. Now, if you truly teach yourself to cast with your right hand and then reel with your left hand on both a bait caster and a spinning rod, then sure, I'm fine with that. I respect that. That's awesome. And that's probably the most efficient way to fish if you could snap your fingers and relearn everything. But if you're casting with your right hand and then reeling with your right hand on a casting setup, but not a spinning setup, I really don't get it. I don't get why you would want to reel with one hand on a bait caster and reel with your other hand on a spinning reel. And I don't know how that makes me the weird one, that I want all of my combos to be consistent. It really would be like me playing pool on the weekends, like at the bar or something, and I shoot with my left hand if I'm stripes, but I shoot with my right hand if I'm solids. It makes no sense. So Dylan, my dude, I'm right there with you. Amen. Keep fighting the good fight. Okay, the next question here is from Keith, and he says, "Howdy, Andrew. I have 2 mailbag questions. First, is there an advantage to using all fluorocarbon line on your reel? I normally use braid to a fluoro leader, but wasn't sure if all fluoro would help me with longer casts or anything. Second, is a lizard something that you'd mostly want to fish when you're fishing shallow as opposed to, say, 20-foot deep water? I wasn't sure if bass normally see lizards that deep or if it would seem unnatural. Thanks for your time. Love the podcast, Keith." Well, Keith, I guess it depends. Your first question anyway about fluorocarbon depends on what type of setup you're using. If it's spinning gear, then no. I think there's no advantage to running all fluorocarbon line versus braid to a fluoro leader. In fact, I think all fluorocarbon line is a disadvantage on a spinning rod because on a spinning setup, it's a little less sensitive. It doesn't cast as far on a spinning reel as just braid does. So on a spinning reel, I think that you should always go braid as your main line, and then you can add a fluoro leader if you need to. But on a casting combo, I kind of feel the opposite is true. With a casting rod, I like to run straight fluorocarbon for all of my bottom and most of my moving baits because I feel like the sensitivity is about the same. You're using heavier baits. When you get used to it, it's great. But the big thing is the casting is about the same. With a spinning rod, there's a lot more memory in fluorocarbon than there is with braid, so it creates a lot of headaches when you're casting and line twists and, wind knots and all that kind of stuff. Where with a bait caster, you don't really have a lot of those problems. You can cast just fine with straight fluorocarbon, but I don't ever have to worry about messing with a fluoro leader if I don't want to, and fluorocarbon is a little bit more abrasion resistant, so that's kind of nice if you just run straight fluoro and you don't have to worry about retying or making sure that your leader knot is all good because you don't have a leader knot. It's just all straight fluorocarbon. So that's kind of how I run both my casting and my spinning rods. But then for your lizard question, no, I think you can throw a lizard at any depth because I don't think it's a question of naturalness, I guess, if that's a word or not. If you think about it, if you throw a jig out in 30 foot of water on a do-nothing mud flat, if there's a bass there, you will get bit on that jig, but that's not a natural place for a crawfish to be. Crawfish need areas to hide, so they're around rocks. They're in crevices. That's where you'll find a lot of crawfish most of the time. A single crawfish in 30 feet of water on a 1,000-yard stretch of nothing but mud is not a natural place for that crawfish to be, but a fish will still eat it. I think the same thing holds true for lizards. You don't really have to worry about that too much. It's just making sure that there are fish there and that you're at the right depth and you have the right weight, and that if the water's murky, that lizard is moving enough to put off enough water displacement or whatever to help fish find it. There's all kinds of things you should worry about. I think the naturalness of the location of that lizard is not one of them. Okay, the next question here is from Chase, and he says, "Hi, Andrew. Next time you do an Amazon buys episode, check out the..." Chase, I'm not going to say this, and let me explain myself first. So I saw this mailbag question originally when it came through. That was probably about a week ago, and I actually bought one of the things that I just about said out loud that you mentioned specifically in this mailbag question, and I bought it because of your mailbag submission. So we are going to do an Amazon episode at some point here soon, but I want this product to be in that episode, and I don't want to kind of blow its cover right now in the mailbag. So while I'm not going to answer your question today, rest assured, Chase, I saw your question to the point where I actually bought this. It's an awesome suggestion. Great call on your part. A great solution or substitution, I guess, for a very expensive, popular product out there right now. Kudos to you, Chase. I have one in my room sitting right beside me as we're recording this, and it's all because of your submission. So more to come on this one a little bit later. Next question is from Matt, and he says, Andrew, I love my Dakota Lithium. Thank you for the extra 5% off. So darn light, and it lasts quite a long time. Now my question, which reel would you choose? A Daiwa Tatula 300 TWS or a Shimano Curado 150 DC? Also, what did you not like about your FeelFree kayaks? I've always been super curious about this for a couple years now. Cheers, Matt. Oh boy, first question here. That's a tough one in terms of the two reels you want me to choose between. On brand, I typically choose Shimano over Daiwa. For most price points, I would say until you get up to about the 300 plus, then it gets a lot tougher. But Matt, you just had to add that little DC at the end of the Curado, and that makes this conversation a little bit tougher for me because I'm pretty publicly not a DC reel guy. I think it's unnecessary. I think they're expensive. They're loud. They're obnoxious. They're just not my favorite types of reels. But I would say that between this comparison, I think it's all going to come down to line capacity because that's your giant difference between these two reels. One, the Shimano Curado DC holds like 110 yards of 12-pound line, and the other, Daiwa Tatula 300, holds 260 yards. So over twice the spool capacity on the Daiwa Tatula 300 versus the Shimano Curado DC. So I guess my question to you is, how much line do you need? Do you need a ton of line capacity for like swim baits or glide baits, or maybe potentially musky fishing or pike fishing, or just running really thick line? Or do you just need a normal amount of line like the Shimano Curado DC will give you? Those are two very different spool capacities. The Daiwa Tatula 300 is a much bigger reel than the Shimano Curado 150 DC. And for your second question about FeelFree, I have absolutely no problems with FeelFree. In fact, for around $1,000, I still recommend that Lure 10 to a lot of people. I think the thing with FeelFree lures, at least the model that I had, is that they're built for stability and comfort and not necessarily speed. So it depends on what's most important to you. If you want a really stable, feature-rich kayak, and honestly, probably the most comfortable seat in any fishing kayak that I've ever owned, then the FeelFree is an awesome choice. But if you're like me and you're in fast-moving water a lot and you need to be nimble and maneuverability is a must, then there are probably better options out there than the FeelFrees. But like with any kayak, it just depends on what's most important to you and how you fish. All right, and the last question here is from Brent, and he says, Hey Andrew, first off, thank you for the show. Without trying to sound too sappy, it honestly means a lot to know that someone will take the time and money to invest in helping others be more efficient anglers. Now to the question. I'm an angler in Arizona, and I don't have much room for multiple setups. With that being said, what setup would be great for an all-around combo? Crankbaits, chatterbaits, Texas rigs, topwater, frogs, etc. Thanks and tight lines, Brent. Well, hey man, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for listening. This is one, in terms of the question, that's going to be pretty easy for me. I think you need a 7-foot to a 7.3, somewhere in there. It could be 7.1, 7.2, whatever you want, but somewhere around there. You need a medium heavy, fast action casting rod, and then you need like a 150 to a 200 sized casting reel. I'd probably get a 7-to-1 because you're going to be doing a lot of different things with it. And then if you're really going to be frogging and throwing top waters and stuff, I would probably throw braid to a fluoro leader so that you have the versatility to do almost everything. Now, the braid isn't going to be ideal for crankbaits, but if you did straight fluoro, then it wouldn't be ideal for frogs or topwater either. So you have to make a choice there with the line, but the combo is pretty standard. 7-foot to 7.3, somewhere in there, medium heavy, you want a fast action, and then I get like a 7-to-1, 150 to 200 size casting reel. That's going to be your workhorse setup. That's the number one rod that every angler should have. Next up, I would say if you're going to get number 2, would be like a 7-foot medium, fast, just spinning combo. But if you made me pick one, I'm going to go with the casting combo for sure, just because it's more versatile and you can do so much more with that casting combo efficiently than you can with the spinning rod. Okay, everybody, that's today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you all. If all goes right, next week we should have a pretty cool guest episode, somebody that you guys are usually requesting quite frequently, so that should be a good one. But as always, go find us on the web, tackletalkpodcast.com. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast. We're over on YouTube. We have an email address, tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. And we will see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.